Good morning. For those of you who have already logged in, we're just going to give people a few more minutes to jump in, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. We're just at the top of the hour. People are still trickling in, so I will give people a few more minutes, and then we'll get started. Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. People can continue to trickle in, and the session will be recorded, and you'll all get a copy of it once we're done. So thank you for joining us today. What we're going to kind of talk about is essentially kind of how to look at your system at the end of the year. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the end of the year, but basically how can you clean up your system so that you're evaluating things like open tasks and jobs, really just taking a good look and setting yourself up for the next year. So my name's Jess Bird. I'm a senior customer success manager here at Function Point. And with me here, who's going to be monitoring the questions, is Gil Daniels, who works alongside me on the team. If there's any questions as we're going through, please don't hesitate to ask. And we will do our best to answer the questions on the call. And if there's anything that kind of maybe sparks interest and you want some further information, by all means, reach out to your designated CSM. If you're unsure of who that person may be, then by all means, you can reach out to our success team as well. So what we're going to talk a little bit about is reviewing your services and expenses. We're going to be looking at things like, when we first set up our system, this is how we thought we would be kind of managing our revenue streams. These are the buckets that we want to track time to, being our internal services. As time goes on, we might recognize that those kinds of things shift, right? Maybe we've kind of went from the account management to now we're looking at things from a more role perspective. So end of the year is always a good opportunity to kind of take a look at how you're using the tool and recognize if there's any changes. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is open tasks, open jobs. A lot of times when we get customers looking for assistance to help clean up their system, the majority of it is because people are not setting the status of the jobs to closed or invoiced, whatever your practice is. and also people are finishing their task, but they're not changing that status to complete. We'll get into a little bit more about what the impact is from a reporting perspective and project management perspective in just a minute. Updating rate cards. So if you're somebody who has, 7 or 8 different clients and they each have different rate cards, and every year you update those rate cards and, adjust those rates. We'll talk a little bit about that. Annual retainer, so kind of part and parcel of going through those open jobs. We also want to look at if we're an organization that has companies that do annual retainers with us every year. How are we kind of reconciling 2024 and getting us set up for 2025? And then we'll talk a little bit about some financial processes as well. Again, if there's any questions you have at any time, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay. And now we're going to jump into it. Just give me a second here. Okay, so I'm sure all of you on the phone are pretty familiar with the dashboard. I'm just logged into my demo system, so if your dashboard looks different, that's likely because you've customized it. But let's take a look. First and foremost is kind of looking at our services. Now, if you're not somebody who has admin functionality, but you still want to see the list of services, one way of doing it is to come in and add an estimate. You can see based on, the different service groups, all the services you have in the system. But for those of you who do have admin privileges, the easiest way is to just click on this admin button, come down and look at your internal hourly services, and then you can start, clear the sort, put them in alphabetical order and start looking. Now you can see that in my system, I've already decided, you know what, we're not using 3D modeling anymore or this POS stand design, right? So those are indicated as inactive. But what I suggest you do is go down, and the other things to be looking at too are, for this one here, I'm only charging GST on this account executive, but for everything else, I have all these taxes applied. So this is going a little bit into the financial area of things where sometimes people will message us and say, hey, I created this invoice, but the tax is calculating incorrectly. So again, and I apologize if a lot of this information is already known to you, but it's always good to go back and double check on the internal service level to make sure that all taxes that should be applicable to that internal service has been applied. Okay. Other things you'll notice here too is that some people choose to enter descriptions. So again, maybe you're looking at estimates have gone out and customers are looking for more information on what animation CGI actually means. We can put in a description against that service, so every single time it's pulled into an estimate, that description's there. So those are other options for you. But really just taking a look to say, like, do I have anything that's kind of repetitive that, when I'm looking at reports, I'm kind of like, well, you're creative and then you're a creative director. What's the actual difference between that? Any questions on this so far? Gil, anything coming in?
Nothing as yet.
Okay, perfect. So the same kind of thing applies also for those of you using external expenses. Again, we might set up our system depending on certain vendors that we use, right? Sometimes people put them pretty general, like copywriting photography, because you could use multiple copywriting vendors or multiple photography vendors. But again, look at this list. And are you starting to use external expenses now that you weren't using at the beginning of the year? And are you just choosing one of the existing options because you don't have something in there? So again, just kind of going through and looking at this list, like right there, I've said, okay, we're no longer using Bing Creative. So I've just disabled that. But really just taking a look at your list, again, making sure the correct taxes are applied to all your services and expenses, and looking to see if there's anything that's outdated or that you're just not using anymore. Okay. The second thing I want to point out is tasks. This is a big thing for a lot of agencies. So when you come in and we look at tasks and we check out the task status, and I'm going to look at things like draft, assigned, and in progress. And what I want to do is I'm not too concerned about the completed tasks right now. I want to look at something like this to say, wow, I have all of these overdue tasks. And again, I hope your system doesn't look like mine. This is my demo system. So if it does, though, this is a good way to clean it up. Again, when you look at these pages, you might be looking at this going, oh, that's way too much information. I don't care about all of that. You can always come in and click on the manage columns. And I want to see what the due date is. I'm not too concerned about the time. I don't like the company short form, so I'd rather have that full company name. And then I want to see if it's overdue, what the estimated number of hours were, what the actual number of hours it were, etc. And I'm gonna like just kind of move this edit button around. I'm gonna drag the company name over to the front, just kind of making it look a little cleaner for myself. And then we're gonna put the task, we'll put the due date over here. And then we're also gonna drag over the service over to here. And again, this is just my preference. You can organize this however you want. And keep in mind when you do this, you're only impacting yourself. You're not changing this for everybody else in your organization that logs into Function Point. So now when I'm looking at these, I see all these overdue tasks, right? I could do a bulk update. I could click on this, bulk edit these, and say all of these, I'm going to either change the due date to now the 26th of December, because I want to push these out. When I confirm that, now my tasks are no longer overdue. Any questions on that? I'm not sure. Not everybody's always used the bulk edit feature from a task perspective. You don't necessarily have to nowadays, because if you close out a job where tasks weren't completed, it does give you that pop-up to say, would you like to also close any associated tasks? But this is another way that, let's say somebody leaves your organization and there's a whole bunch of tasks associated with them. We could click on, these ones here, and we could also do a bulk edit and say, okay, they were previously assigned to this person, but now I'm going to assign them to this person. And that would make those adjustments as well. So it's always really good, because the other impact that this has is when we're looking at overdue tasks in conjunction with things like the work planning view, and these tasks are still like in progress or, assigned, we're still thinking that that work needs to be done. So when we're trying to figure out from our staff perspective who can take on what, having those overdue tasks and those incomplete tasks does impact what we see here as well. Any questions, Gil?
Not so far, but that is a great point.
Yeah. So that's the other thing to point out. And what I would recommend is that we do have those timesheet weekly summary, things like that, and task summary reports that we can look at. So, every once in a while, I would just say to the individuals that are actually getting tasks assigned to them, just go and find your task, whether you want to do it by looking at the Kanban board, which some people tend to gravitate to. You can look it up by board, and then just look at things like, here's the due date. It's going to give you overdue right away, right? So then you can start looking at what's due next week, whatever your preference is, and you can always toggle back and forth. But we really want to get people that actually have a task assigned to them to be more proactive in managing their tasks, right? Another way of doing it is just looking for that specific individual. And I know Beth has one in the system. So if I can find all Beth's tasks, I can be like, okay, these are all in progress. These are confirmed or completed. I don't care about those. But Beth should have closed these out. So then I can bulk update these and change the status to complete. Apply to checked fields. Confirm. So now when I'm running a task report and I'm looking to see anything again with the status of draft, assigned, and in progress, I can see kind of what's left over, if there's anything else that needs to be cleaned up. Okay.
Jess, do you want to just show one more time how you got to that for everybody?
To this page, or to, yeah. So if you just go into find tasks, I always tend to gravitate towards the status, right? So then I'm going to pick draft, assigned, and in progress, because essentially drafts, they could be jobs that you kind of set up earlier in the year, maybe forgot about it. All these tasks are sitting out there in draft status. Assign means that you've actually put them into a schedule, or you've created a task for that individual and it's been actually assigned to them. They just haven't changed that to the in progress status to start working on it. And then obviously in progress means that they've acknowledged the receipt of that task, they've changed the status, and they should be tracking time to it at that point. The other thing you can do here while you're in this page, if you don't want to have to enter those filters every time, you can come up here to filter settings, and you can create a filter and just say like, task review list. You can save that, and then you can come find your tasks. And again, manage your columns so you can pull in what you want to see. If your people are using milestones or any tags or things like that, by all means, you can pull that information in as well. And you can also export to a CSV. And if you're wondering why this looks as disabled, you have to make sure that you've selected things. You don't always have to select the whole list. You can go and just be like, oh, it's just these 3 tasks that I want to update. And then once you've selected those, you can use the bulk update to change any of these fields here, the due date, milestone, status, etc. That helpful?
Very helpful.
Perfect.
Thank you.
No problem. Now we're going to look at the same thing from a jobs perspective, right? So again, if we have jobs that are still sitting there in the open status, but they've actually been closed, like we're done, anything from a, kind of post-mortem perspective has been done. We also want to double check that we're checking the right status of this. So when we're looking at our reports, whether you're using the premium VI or just the regular standard reports, being able to see, okay, well, why is this job still open? I thought we were done, right? So same kind of premise. Find jobs. We want to look at the job status. And if you also have statuses like on hold or things like that, then by all means, like pull those in so we can kind of get an update. So here's all my open jobs. Oh, my delivery date was 2023. So my guess is I probably should have closed that out, right? So when you can take a look at this, you can open it up, recognize that this is done, and change the status to closed. And this is with a pop-up I was telling you about. So therefore, you almost want to start at the job level to close any open jobs that shouldn't be open anymore, because what it will do is close those active tasks for you at the same time. So my apologies, I should have went this route first. But so once I apply that, I've taken that in, and now you can see that all of my tasks that were assigned to this have been changed to the status of completed. And let me just go back to that find task for you for a second, because now when I click on that drop down, I see my task review list. It's already got my pre-populated statuses, and I can find my tasks. So you could do the same thing on the find job. You want to look for jobs that have the status of open, maybe on hold, and then we can also do job. Oops. I can't type when people are looking at me. Sorry. Okay, and then we can make that a public filter. And just to point this out here, this you can say, oh, I want to just come in and adjust my columns now so I can see everything that I want to see in the order that I want to see it. And then you save your columns, save this, you find your jobs, change this because maybe the status, you want to see that kind of at the beginning. And then you're like, okay, here's all my open jobs. Looking at the delivery dates, things like that nature. Looking at things that are estimated, things that don't have invoices against them yet, things of that nature. Any questions on that?
No new questions so far.
Okay. Now, kind of in the same vein, let's take a little look at campaigns here, right? So let's say I have this like social media campaign. I've got my jobs in here. So I've got a monthly billing job, and then this is my summary page in my microsite optimization. Basically what I want to look at and say, okay, well, it's now the end of the year. I'm looking at my job financials. How did we shake out? We'd estimated we'd spend this much time. This is what we actually spent. So you want to make sure that if all the work is done, all the invoicing is done, that you're coming in and you're changing those job statuses to closed. And then if you are going to be using similar jobs for the next year, you can already just take your social media campaign, right? You can create a new one for the next year. And then you could take your existing estimates and you could say, okay, well, let me just do this first. So we'll say social media campaign. Now this is going to be for 25. I'm probably going to have the same budget. I'm going to put this under North Shore. Oop, not office, sorry. North Shore. Campaign code. Just adjusting this to represent 25. And I'm just going to put this as social media campaign, retainer. And again, this list is all customizable. So it's really just kind of determining how you're breaking out your campaigns. And one thing I'll point out too is if your system is still kind of in the native naming convention, this will say projects. So campaigns, projects are quite synonymous and interchangeable within function point. And then when I save this here, I can come back to my original campaign for last year. So if I look at 2024 campaign, And I'm like, yeah, we're pretty much going to do the same thing this year. We're going to do another summary page for them. I can copy this estimate. I'm just going to swap this out. I'm going to get the 25 campaign. I'm going to adjust my delivery date. So my estimate date could be the start of 2025. And maybe the summary page will only take me till there. Don't worry about these fields too much if you don't use them. And then we can save this. We've got our, pre-populated hours. And if, again, you're looking at this for next year, and let's say the scope's going to change. So maybe this year we need 40. We can just make those adjustments. We need 30 for this. And we need less agency services because they're not a pain in the butt anymore. So we can save that. Once we've added that in the job, now we can look for North Shore Water Group. We look at our campaigns. We come in there. Oh, what happened there? My bad. And maybe it did not save. Just going to go back and do that again. Company North Shore Auto Group. 25. That's probably what happened there. And then we'll adjust the dates again. And I do get a lot of comments and the delivery date being at the top and the estimate date being below that. I think it's literally just because the estimate date will default for you when you create it. But other than that, we're going to save this now. Come in, we're going to, again, adjust our hours. 15. I'm going to save this. Now you can come back to our social media campaign and you can create out your estimates for the year ahead of time. And then when you're ready to kick off the new year, you can add the job. And you also have the ability, if you had an associated task list with the previous estimate, you can pull that over so then your tasks are already created as well. Any questions on that?
Nothing
now
new.
We would come, no? Okay. Then we would come back and we would change, we'd edit this. So the status of the 2024 campaign is complete. We also want to make sure that just because you change the status of the campaign does not automatically change the status of the jobs. So we want to come in here and make sure we're changing these to closed as well. Just use the breadcrumb to come back to the second job. Closed. And we'll also close the monthly billing job. Perfect. So now this campaign's closed. So if I go and I look for find jobs, and I'm looking for the status of open, I'm not going to see anything for the 2024 North Shore. Any questions on that? Okay.
Just a comment from Jill. She says she loves the breadcrumb mention, and that one alone is worth a webinar, she said.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm on the phone with customers sometime and I'll go, just go there. And they're already they're wanting to go to the campaign. So they go up and they go there. And I'm like, no, just go through there. The breadcrumb's great. And just to kind of highlight that, just in case anybody else cares, when you look at the company level, you're going to see everything, right? So then you can say, here's all the campaigns. This tab I like as well, the job financials, because then you can say, in the history of my working with the North Shore Auto Group, this is how well we've tracked, right? So we've estimated this number of hours, we've tracked that number of hours, our invoices are positive. So this is kind of a nice way to look at things as well. The only other thing I really wanted to kind of talk about was, things like year-end kind of financing. So if you do use things like deposit invoices and you come to the end of the year and you're like, we have a balance left over, feel free to reach out to us directly. We don't have kind of a one solve fits all for that for people specifically because people have different accounting practices. So, but we do have ways of managing that within Function Point that will adhere to accounting kind of practices. So if you are somebody that ends up with a deposit invoice balance at the end of the year, and you're like, well, how can I clear this out and use those funds for next year? Then by all means, reach out to directly to your CSM or the support team, and we can certainly assist you with that. One other thing I'll point out, and this is something that also gets overlooked, is just taking a look at your companies. Looking at, your companies, and again, we want to look at the status. It's always going to default to active. Find the companies and just look and say, like, are we still working with all of these people? Or is there anybody that, for whatever reason, they've stopped working with us? An alternative, you can pull the same list looking for your inactive clients to see if there's anybody that you might want to retarget. Maybe you started positioning new things within your business that could benefit clients that you've stopped working with because you didn't have that offering before. So it's always a good way from a marketing perspective to go, hey, let's take a look at all my inactive clients and say, is there any way that we could potentially reach out to these guys again? I don't have any in my system, but you get the drift. Same thing with your contacts. So one way of doing it, you could look for a specific company and you have a lot of contacts there. Paul's decided he's going to go work for Starbucks, so we can come in and just say, okay, Paul's no longer my contact, and just change that status to inactive. Any other questions? From a best practice perspective, like I say, it's always nice if like the task updates and the job updates, if we can try to keep people on top of it. I know in some organizations, it's the responsibility of the account executive, the account planner, account manager, whoever, to manage those jobs and close them out. But in other organizations, it's not. So what I would recommend is just kind of taking a look at your internal processes, determine who is kind of responsible for actioning task statuses. Maybe it's a PM that kind of just manages everybody tasks, or if it's more on an individual basis, then training those staff members to run these little quick lists, to make adjustments, to make sure that they're staying track to their due dates. And if they need more time, then communicating as such with the individuals that have assigned them the tasks.
Jess, I got one comment, a question here from our good friend Richard. On the company job view, can you filter the data in the job financials tab to just 2024?
Yes, she can. So this, if you look at the job financials, this is what I like. So if you're an agency who, let's say, for example, you have a retainer, or like you're doing like monthly SEO, every single month you're doing SEO, right? Some people like to break it out into monthly jobs. Other people are like, I can't be bothered. I just want to see what's happening between a certain date range. So you could put in like, I only want to see what time's been tracked or what expenses have been logged during this date range, and you can filter by date. That's a bad example. Let me find one that's got actually some data in there. Got some actuals. Okay, perfect. So then when you look at this, we're like, this is all time, right? But if I only want to see what was, let's go, I just want to see what the date is on this. Okay, so December 23rd. So if I want to look in my financials, I want to go back to May 2023 to December 12th, 2023. And when I filter by date, it's going to just show me anything that happened during that time frame. So my estimated will always stay the same, but my actuals will likely change because it's only going to show me what's happened during those time frames. Non-billed timesheets that are coming in. And if you needed to edit, is that helpful? Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. Anything else? And like I said, like I wanted to kind of keep this high level because these are a lot of the things that I see customers asking about. They're like, oh, I can't look at my task list anymore because everything's overdue and it's a yard sale. So these are just really kind of things that if you can get in the habit of checking on a regular basis, and again, whatever your internal process is within your agency, it's really good for at the end of the year. It minimizes the potential amount of cleanup that you have to have, but it also provides you more accurate reports as you're going through the year, right? The more we stay on top of the status updating and things like that, the more clear picture we have of what's actually happening within our organization. Awesome. If I'll give people a couple of minutes, is there any other questions or comments?
I have another comment here, reviewing services and expenses.
Yes. Are we looking to see how to get back there again? So on the admin button, if you come down, and again, you have to have admin, permissions, but then under service and expense management to see the full list of what you have for your internal services. And again, you can clear sort, organize them however you like, organize by, ones that are already kind of deactivated. So you're like, okay, yeah, none of that's changed. Or maybe potentially it has. Maybe you're like, oh, we actually need to start doing lab work again. So that's the other thing, pardon me, I should have pointed out that if you have a bunch of inactive services in your system, before you go and create something else, double check that you didn't already use it in the past, right? Because then you can easily just go in and say, oh, okay, this one's back on the plate, so I'm going to change the status back to active, and then we're good to go. Any other questions, comments?
Nothing so far.
Well, like I said, if you know who your CSM is and you have further questions, or you just want to kind of pick their brain about, other kind of tidying up scenarios, or even just admin functionality in general, reach out to them directly. Otherwise, you can reach out to our support team at support@functionpoint.com, and they can put you in touch with whoever your CSM is. Okay, I hope you guys found this helpful in some capacity. And like I said, if you need anything else at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And also, if you've got any ideas of other things you'd like to see from a webinar perspective, things that you'd like to show, by all means, connect with your CSM and provide us that information so we can tailor these sessions to kind of meet your needs. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy holidays, and hope to chat with you guys soon. Take care.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks.